Hello, Talking with Joshi and Anime Curious. My name is RandomSama613 and welcome to Anime Opinions. The summer 2014 anime season has come to a close. We're about to start a new season, and as such, I have some final thoughts on a few series. Next up for this particular episode is going to be Aldnoah 0, a series that I did do a first impression on all the way back in July. It is a 12-episode anime series at this time. It is announced to be a split core series, so we will get another season in the winter 2015 anime season. So it is not finished at this time, and it is very evident that it is not finished at this time due to the ending. I will say immediately that there will be some spoilers in this Final Thoughts video. I will keep them to a minimum. I will not be very specific about most things, but there will be some minor plot spoilers because, in my first impression, I didn't talk about the plot at all. So, the other thing I will say is that everything in my first impression covers everything that I'm not going to cover here. So the animation will be covered there, the OST will be covered there, and other things like that are covered in my first impression, and I stand by everything I said there. Nothing has changed from then. I'm going to go straight into the parts that I basically didn't cover, and that would be the characters. So the characters and the plot are actually going to be interwoven, so I'm just going to talk about both freely as stuff comes up. So I would say that, like I said in my first impression, Salem was still the most interesting character within the entire universe. I think that who is supposed to be the main character on the Earth side, Inaho, was still very bland. He was very uninteresting to me. I found him to be a bit too much, I hate to use the term, but I found him to be a bit too much Jesus-kun for my taste. I think that he was less so than other characters from this season. Specifically, I would be referring to Kirito and Tatsuya. However, I still think that he had elements thereof, and that was a problem for me. I can also see that being just an issue with the mecha genre and being a mecha protagonist, so I can kind of see that being an issue. But Salem was still the most interesting character to me because he had the most, I'd say, character motivations, and he had the most inner conflict to deal with. And I think that made him just the most interesting character to follow. And that remained true through the entire series. Next up, in relation to Salem, that Count Sazbaum was a fantastic antagonist. I think that because he wasn't revealed as the primary antagonist until about halfway through the season or so, that it really made it more interesting to try to figure out who actually started this. Who is the mastermind behind it? Because you thought it was someone else until about halfway through the series. And then things changed and it made it more interesting, and Sazbaum was revealed as the actual antagonist. And I think that because they did the bait and switch with a different count, that it made him a more interesting character. And I found that his motivation was, while being just basically revenge and being relatively overall bland as a result, I think that it was still interesting and gave him a little bit more depth as a character. Moving along from Sazbaum, I found that Princess Salem was actually a decently interesting character. She had some character growth. Her naivety about just how she thought that all she had to do was ask the Martians to stop fighting and they would stop, contrasted very starkly with the reality of the situation, which was that while she may have been the catalyst, she was not the reason for the fighting. And I think that just having that contrast between just her just basically pureness and the actual just dirtiness of the situation was really interesting, and it gives a great contrast, and it really helped to bring out some interesting parts of the series, and I liked that a lot. But at the same time, I found her to, again, not be a particularly interesting character. She didn't have a ton of depth, which was a problem, but that can be said of a lot of the characters in Aldnoah 0, and a lot of the plot as well, is that there wasn't a lot of depth, and it felt like it had been done before, and these were not particularly original characters, which was a major problem I still have with the show. This is another character to talk about real briefly. I felt that Lieutenant Marito was, while an interesting section of the plot, I felt like it was disconnected from the majority of what was going on. I felt like dealing with him and his relationship to the captain was, while interesting and while it did add a little bit of a twist to the series, it was more of an aside and didn't, for me, add too much to the series as a whole, I felt. Which is, again, that's a personal thing, but I felt like he didn't add enough to the series for that plotline to have been there. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the plot in general and just a few more aspects of it thereof. So I found that the Martian politics and the Martian side of this whole thing was a lot more well-rounded and developed than the Earth side. I felt like you got all of the Martian political parts. You got everything from the Versian royal family down to the counts. I felt like you got more of what was going on Mars, why the situation was what it was, what the motivation for the characters was. I felt you got that a lot more than the Earth forces. Now, to be fair, most of the Earth forces were too busy dying to actually get any motivation out there other than, oh god, I'm going to die. So I can understand how the Versians seemed to get more development and actually have just more in general than the Earth forces. However, it still felt like there could have been something done about that. I don't know exactly what, but it felt like it was lopsided in terms of development. And that was another issue I had. So the main focus of the show was Salem's quest to stop the fighting. And that was a major focus. And as a result, the main focus was around her and Inaho and all the school kids. And that was fine. It was okay for a backdrop. It was relatively, generic mecha, and I was expecting something like that. Obviously, she fails in this because while she was the catalyst, she was not the reason for the fighting. As a result, so after that, she felt like more of a plot device, and she still felt like a plot device, but she felt like even more of just a generalized plot device than anything else. I am going to briefly talk about the ending of Aldnoah 0, this season at least. I felt that I will not be specific in what happened. I will say is I felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't particularly expecting that ending, and I'm not sure where they're going to go with the second half now because of what transpired. I don't know what they're going to do. Unless they do something really dumb, which I'm hoping they don't. But I don't know where they're going to go because of what transpired. I had to be very vague because I don't want to spoil this for you. But that last episode really felt like an attention grab and said, hey, you need to watch the second season. You can't forget about the second season because now we're going to leave you on a gigantic fucking cliffhanger. I felt like that was not a fair way to do the split core. I think that arguably Tokyo Ghoul did it better. I could argue that Log Horizon did it better. I could argue that any number of shows that have had split cores have done a better job of maintaining your interest, but at the same time not leaving you at a cliffhanger with no idea what the fuck is going to go on. Because of the events that transpired, I don't know what they're going to do for the next core. And I'm interested, but at the same time, it's very annoying for them to do that. Because if there wasn't an announced second core, and this was just how they were going to end it, this would be awful. And as a result, I don't feel that it's a particularly good mecha series. I don't particularly feel it's a good series in general. I feel that it was okay. I definitely enjoyed watching it, but I think that that ending really gave me a sour taste in my mouth. And I don't really don't like it when studios do that. So that's my thoughts on that. But what did you guys think of Aldnoah 0 overall and the finale? Please keep the spoilers to a minimum. Go ahead and leave your comments down below saying what you think. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, go ahead and dislike it by all means. But please leave a comment. Let me know what you didn't like. But until next time, I've been RandomSama613. This has been Anime Opinions. And until then, watch more anime.